AfriKili family, Global Pack Nation. Donald Trump and his America First policy continue to send shockwaves around the world. And so there seems to be opportunities that are appearing around the world to kind of realign the balance of power. However, as we had mentioned a couple weeks ago, and as continues to be the case, it seems that African leaders continue to be inaudible. They really need to wake up. Well, there's certainly one person, though, who is definitely very audible, who is loud, and that is Ambassador Arikana Chihombori-Quao, who made an appearance and has lambasted the African leaders. Well, in today's discussion, I will expand the scope and go just beyond African leaders and look at Black leaders, generally speaking, in the global pack, because I definitely think that they need to wake up to seize all the opportunities that are appearing on the global scene when it comes to geopolitical realignments, when it comes to the balance of power, but when it comes to just generally speaking, the well-being of Black people around the world in the global pack. So there you have it. That will be the topic of our discussion today. Let's fasten our seatbelts, let's dive in, and let's get to work. AfriKili family and Global Pack Nation, welcome once again to another edition of the Global Pack Show presented by Tony Mfumu Simba. It is a pleasure once again to be in front of you today on this Thursday, March 20th, 2025. Thank you very much to all of you that are supporting this concept, supporting the Global Pack Show since we launched it back in January. Thank you very much for all of you who subscribe to the show, who watch it, like it, and so on and so forth. For those of you who are not part of this community yet, let me ask you to just take a couple seconds and please click on the subscribe button. Only takes a few seconds, but it allows you to become part of this community so that together we can grow this Global Pack concept, the Global Pack Show, which is our new live show, and you can be part of the conversation, and together we can reach the goals that we've set forth for 2025. So please subscribe. Only takes a few seconds. Without you, we cannot do it. So thank you very much in advance. Also, remember to check out our website, www.afrikili.com. For those of you who like reading, you may find past releases of our written blog. And as future blogs will be released, by entering your email address, you will have that delivered directly into your mailbox. There you have it. All right, so let's jump straight into our topic today. This is an exciting one for me. I will discuss this, and I will definitely, as usual, not try to be emotional about this, but try to stay on I would say, reasonable point of view, because at the end of the day, our platform, the Global Pact, that has a mission to build strong coalition and bring bridges across the Global Pact, build bridges, across the Global Pact, so that we can change the narrative, change the well-being, and elevate the conditions of all Black people around the world in the Global Pact. So that's people of African descent, people in Africa, people in the Caribbean, African Americans, and so on, because together we can definitely go further and work towards a more unified and equal world. That is our mission, and so our discussion today will certainly remain on that level, because it's never really about blaming when it comes to this platform. It's never about pointing the finger, but it is about advancing and seeing how together we can get to a better place, right? A more positive place. All right. So the onset of this discussion today, I was very interested. A couple days ago, so that was on more than a couple days ago, on March 16, Ambassador Chihombori-Quao. If you know her, you know she's a firecracker. I mean, this lady never pulls a punch. I often equate her to Donald Trump in a way that she says it like it is, right? This lady, she says it the way it is. When she was a diplomat, she was the ambassador, so the permanent representative for the OAU, the Organization of African Unity in the United States. Ultimately, she was painted by many as being way too controversial because, again, she does not pull any punches. So on the 16th, 4 days ago, she was invited on Al Jazeera to talk about the current, geopolitical climate with the America First policy of Donald Trump pulling aid with regards to Africa, how African leaders should respond, and the continent as a whole, how Black people should respond. And she went like frontal mode. She did not pull any punches. Obviously, I cannot play the whole show on this on our show. I can put the whole video. I mean, that's on Al Jazeera. But I've identified a quote. So I'm going to play about a minute of her interview. You can always find out more. And then we'll come back and comment on it. So this show will really center about my commentary on that. But beyond that, how African leaders, but Black leaders in general, even in the United States, in the Caribbean, across the world, should respond to the geopolitical seismic shift that are happening, obviously incited by Donald Trump's America First policy. So let me play the video and then listen to it, and then we'll come back and discuss it in once it is all done. So let me put it here. Give me one moment, and we shall play it. Okay. Give me 1 second. All right, what is happening here? Oh, do we have a technical difficulty? Give me one second. Right. Okay, folks, I have.
What happens now when these aid programs are withdrawing? Does the social contract between American mining operations or other global mining operations, does it give an opportunity for the power dynamic to shift and change? And what will that look like?
I think this is a wake-up call for the African leaders. To the same extent that President Trump is saying USA first, African leaders must also say Africa first. This is a wake-up call to the African leaders to take inventory of what is really happening in their countries. Do they really need the peanuts that are coming in as aid? What is really going out? If I may use the example of what happened in Niger, when the government decided they were going to take over the mining of their uranium. The French companies that were mining the uranium were paying the government 80 cents a kilo for the uranium, and then turning around and selling the uranium to the rest of the world at 200 euros a kilo. So that one move from the Nigerian government to say we are now going to take ownership of our own uranium, they went from realizing about $1 billion in uranium resources to over 300 billion a year. Do you realize what I'm talking about? No amount of NGO could bring that kind of money. And this is only one mineral. Now imagine the country taking inventory of all their minerals and benefiting from their natural resources like the rest of the countries in the Western world. That is what African leaders need to look at.
All right, we are back. Okay, so that was certainly fiery, I would say. So let's come into our topic right for today. You saw the title, and we mentioned Black leaders must wake up. So it's fascinating. I mean, Ambassador Chihombori-Quao said many things during this interview on Al Jazeera. It's the show called The Bottom Line. Not making any publicity for them, but you can go and check it out. It's interesting if you want to follow everything she mentioned. It was released on the 16th, so about 4 days ago. Striking example, right? She's mentioned, for example, how the country of Niger, not Nigeria, but Niger, which is the French-speaking counterpart, sharing a border. Niger that has uranium. As you know, uranium, the very radioactive material used for nuclear bombs, nuclear weapons, and so on. Well, there was a French company that was exclusively mining uranium in Niger, was paying the country about 80 cents per kilogram, according to Ambassador Chihombori-Quao, and turning around and selling that same uranium for about 200 euros on the market. That to me, I mean, I might need to go back and just double check the numbers, but that seems excessive. Can you imagine? So the country of Niger that has the uranium that obviously the French companies and others could not access it without going into Niger. So Niger has the mineral, but was allowing it to be exploited at and being paid 80 cents per kilogram, turning around, and a French company takes that same material and sells it for 200 euros per kg. Now, when there was the coup in Niger, the military establishment pushed the president aside, started taking many measures, and one of them was to take over the mining of that uranium, because it would appear that the previous president obviously was corrupted based on what was being said, and the junta, or the military powers that controlled the coup in Niger, took over, certainly woke up. You know, this show today is about black leaders wake up. They woke up, took over, turned around, and projected to make over $300 billion per year. That is very, very significant. Now, the reason I'm bringing it up here, this example, you know, I was flabbergasted. Just like I was very pleased to follow this conversation by Ambassador Chihombori-Quao, I was flabbergasted literally by following a few days ago the president of the Democratic Republic of the Congo, who is named Felix Antoine Tshisekedi, who appeared on some American channels to advance a proposal where he was willing to give exclusive exploitation of the mineral in the DRC to the United States of America in exchange for peace in his country, because there's a conflict that has been ongoing. I've talked about it at length. Me being from the Democratic Republic of the Congo originally, it's obviously something that's very dear to my heart. The suffering and the killings that have gone in that country, millions and millions of people that have died in over 30 years. Conflict with the neighboring country, which is the Rwanda, supporting a rebel group. Anyways, it's conflict that I have followed from the onset. I'm very connected to that. But seeing the president of the Congo coming on TV and saying that I am willing, I will just give you all the resources in my country in exchange for peace. Goodness gracious. And then you contrast that, for example, to what Volodymyr Zelensky did when he was invited to the White House on February 28th. Came into the White House for a meeting that was presented as a capitulation, where he would just relinquish all his rare earth minerals to the U.S. and he would sign them away without any security guarantee. And he refused to do that. And then you contrast that to the president of the DRC that is willingly just saying, just come on and take over the resources in exchange for peace. I was really, really flabbergasted, and it really annoyed me, to be quite frank with you. In the current geopolitical context, where the U.S., under the leadership of Donald Trump, is espousing a policy of America first, wanting to disengage from its positions across the world. And you're seeing resistance from some blocs around the world. This is certainly not the time to just come and reopen your doors again and say, you know what? Just come and just take advantage. When you know that in return, Donald Trump is telling you his interest is America first. It's certainly not your interest, Mr. President of the Democratic Republic of the Congo. or any African leader for that matter. So why would this president come and just wanting to give away his country's resources? I'm glad I was made aware of there's a resistant movement that is brewing in, I think, Washington, D.C., with some people from the Democratic Republic of the Congo putting petitions together and wanting to stand against that. I'm very happy to hear that. It's just very, very, very unfortunate here. This is not the time to beg anybody. You have the resources. You are in a position of strength and power because it's resources that others need. You should absolutely not be in a position of begging. If anything, negotiation need to happen on a level playing field. That is not the message that, unfortunately, the president of the Democratic Republic of Congo, Felix Tshisekedi, that is not the image he was conveying. This is not the time to beg, folks. So, back to what Arikana Chihombori was saying. Her focus, her entire intervention was focused on Africa, right? Africans, she's talking about African leaders. Saying that, okay, as the U.S. is saying America first, the U.S. is pulling away with its USAID. No need to beg. It takes two to tango, as she said, you know. So if Donald Trump does not want to tango with you, I mean, you certainly will not go and start begging. So I wholeheartedly agree with that position. However, I want to expand the scope beyond Africa that she was talking about. I want to expand it to the global PAC, so Black leaders across the world, in the United States of America, in the Caribbean, in Latin America, and of course in Africa as well. Let's englobe the global PAC. Since our show is called the Global PAC Show, it's about people of African descent across the world, whether ancestors left the continent 400 years ago or more recently, but we're talking about the global PAC, the global Pan-African community. So leaders in the global PAC. With what's unfolding with the America First policy, as I mentioned yesterday and in previous shows, there is an opportunity here because there are gaps that are being created across the world. Gaps that must be filled in a way that will, in the long term, transform the balance of power, rebalance the balance of power in this very unequal world in which we're living in today, in terms of international relations on the geopolitical stage. In order for that to happen, however, there is a necessity for having a unified voice as we're advocating or fighting for certain issues. Arikana Chihombori-Quao, Ambassador Chihombori-Quao, in her intervention on Al Jazeera towards the end, talked about the importance of uniting for African leaders, not to go in a dispersed approach where you have tiny countries left and right trying to negotiate, but rather unifying their voice to have a stronger voice, a stronger negotiation power. I think the same apply here with all leaders across the world, as I'm seeing here, where it is necessary to have unity. And unfortunately, I am not seeing that unity right now. You know, when I'm looking at reactions from leaders, I am not seeing, for example, leaders in Africa talk about issues pertaining to African American, issues pertaining to Black people in Haiti, issue pertaining to Black people in Latin America. So out of the mouth of African leaders, you're not hearing that. Although one might argue, well, I mean, in Haiti, you have troops from Kenya, so that's, you know, African leaders talking about it. But generally speaking, I do not see that. On the other side, from African American leaders, as strategies are being put together to counter the impacts of Donald Trump policy, I am not seeing or hearing African American leaders bring up issues pertaining to Africans on the continent, to Black people in the Caribbean, in Latin America, and so on. When I'm looking at leaders in the Caribbean, I'm not hearing them speak about issues pertaining to Africa or African Americans. So that unity is certainly not there. And quite frankly, I cannot fault regular folks, I would say, who are not necessarily interested with issues happening far from where they are. You know, there's that concept of out of sight, out of mind. For example, if you're in the US or you're in Africa, you're in the Caribbean, you're dealing with issues that are affecting you every day that you can see. When it's out of sight, it's out of mind. That is a human thing, right? And your network can also only extend to a certain point. So that's understandable. However, when it comes to leaders, because this is where I'm targeting my comments here, there is a necessity to strategize and start creating a narrative that will expand our constituency. Because right now, yes, as those leaders are strategizing to counter the impact of America First policy, or within the United States, the impact of the anti-diversity policies and things of that nature, leaders have a constituency, right, that they need to respond to. So it wouldn't make sense to a constituency to hear the leader necessarily talk about issues happening far away in a different country, in a different continent. However, it is incumbent upon Black leaders, in my sense, across the world, in Africa, in the Caribbean, in the United States, to start incorporating more and more in their narratives this sense of a unity, this Pan-Africanist sentiment. There needs to be a neo-Pan-Africanist wave, in my sense. And this is not just ideological idealism or something along those lines. It is that the reason for doing that, in my sense, is that a unified bloc, by really creating this Pan-Africanist bloc, and you will never get everybody, but start advocating together, start forming a bloc that increases our overall power as we are wanting to shift the balance of power. It is critical to have that Pan-Africanist awakening. It is absolutely crucial and critical. The gaps that are being created, for example, in Africa, will create opportunities for, I think, wealth creation in the long term by plugging those gaps strategically, by no longer just looking on the outside, by African leaders strategically plugging those gaps. Industries will be created to fill the gap left by, America pulling away, whether it's in humanitarian responses, not so much, but in development response, which are longer term, right? Education, healthcare, agriculture, and so on. Well, as those gaps are being created, there are opportunities, I think, for people in the diaspora to also participate in filling those gaps, creating wealth in the long term, and benefiting as a whole. As I always say, a strong Africa will be to the benefit of Black people across the world. That is something I strongly believe it. We see how a strong China is beneficial to Chinese people around the world. In the same way, a strong India is beneficial to Indians across the world. A strong Africa would be very beneficial to people of African descent across the world. I strongly believe it. By gathering the participation of different Black communities around the world would only enhance the response. So now the gaps creating in the Caribbean the same way. Within the United States, having coalitions that are created, assembling Black people from different origins would only enhance the efforts that are happening within the U.S. This message of unity, that has been a pillar of this platform from day one, when we started simply as AfriKili and we're making produced videos back then, not so much live videos. Unity has always been central. And now, as we're more in a global PAC format, which is this live format, unity is still central to what our dialogues and our mission on this platform as we go forward. It is crucial for people of African descent to come together, unify, address issues together. That will only enhance our respective responses. So creating a global constituency should be of primordial importance for Black leaders across the world. Again, I'm talking about leaders here. Let's also not maybe let me say this. There is a sentiment sometimes when you start talking about issues of just Black issues here, Black people here, people are fearing appearing too racist or racial inclined. And so you might have leaders that will avoid framing issues in a matter of race, right? And just using different angles, but really avoiding that, the racial angle, because they don't want to be seen as too racial or something along those lines. Look, from my perspective, it is not something we should fear or avoid. Leaders should not fall into that trap of fearing, risking being called too racial or something along those lines. Simply because as we're addressing these issues, it is not with the objective of dividing societies or dividing communities or creating separations. Absolutely not. It's at least within this platform, I have no interest in having any racial divisive semantics. As if you follow me, you know from the get-go, I actually don't even believe in race. The concept of human race does not exist, right? We're all one race. Human races on the basis of skin color is obviously a social fabrication, as you know on this platform, as we've discussed at length, created to advantage certain group as opposed to others. So it's a fictitious creation. But the reality is that has taken root in our societies. Now, this concept of race on the basis of color exists. If we want to eliminate that, or at least mitigate the inequalities or the structural racism that was created on the basis of skin color, it is important to address that frontally and not shy away from that. As we design solutions and strategies, it is important to talk about that. But obviously, with the end goal of getting to a point where the differences on the basis of skin color will no longer be a reality, then we can overcome that. But we're far from that. And so avoiding addressing those issues do not make the situation better. It simply continues to sweep dust under the rug, and it allows us to continue creating on top of rotten foundations. So to my leaders out there, whether you are leading countries, you're leading civil society efforts, platform movements, don't shy away from talking about issues of race, because we have to address the problems if we want to come up with sound solutions. So let's not shy away from that. That is very, very important for me to address. Because in another risk, as we start now moving away or deciding not to address or frame our strategies by highlighting and focusing on targeting, for example, Black people to enhance the well-being of Black people. So when we start avoiding doing that, we're now essentially building on a broken structural system. And then on top of that, we now have the issues of classicism and issues of poverty that are very real issues that are affecting not only Black people, but people across the world. There's a real issue of just wealth inequality that is felt by people of all races. That is a reality. Classicism and poverty is a big problem in our societies today. Nevertheless, we cannot decide to just start addressing these issues of poverty, issues of classicism, without fixing some of the structural inequality and structural racism that we're that have been utilized as a system to build our societies. We need to reverse the impact of those structural racist policies across the world. And to do that, we need to be able to address the issues of race frontally. So let's not shy away with it. And for those who will accuse us or accuse leaders that take that angle of being racist, so be it. You will never make everybody happy anyways. You'll be damned if you do, you'll be damned if you don't. But as long as we understand that the reason for doing that is that we want to get to a point where we have a more equal society. We want to get to a situation where the color of our skin really no longer just puts us behind the 8 ball, as was the case for too long. Then that's where we want to get to. And so we will continue advocating for that, at least on this platform, the Global PAC, Global Pan-African Community. Just understand that we are focusing on a lot of those issues, but because we want to get to a more equal society. So we'll continue pushing for creating strong coalitions, bridges across global Pan-African communities, Black people of African descent across the world. That is what we want to get to. But as the subject of this show was, it's like Black leaders need to wake up. Wake up from this slumber. This is no longer an environment where you should just be waiting for the situation to eventually change. No. We need to have the energy. We need to come with the same frontal attack, just like Ambassador Chihombori-Quao is doing with her approach. Our leaders need to understand that, look, if Donald Trump is saying America first, then you will say Africa first if you're in Africa. You will say Caribbean first if you're in the Caribbean. If you're in the United States, and Donald Trump policy is saying, okay, we're anti-diversity, we're anti-affirmative action, and so on, you'll say, you know what? I will build coalitions to ensure that we highlight issues affecting Black communities and continue doing it forcefully. But we need to do it in a unified manner. So that's really what I wanted to talk about today, right? I really want to see more energy. I would love to see more energy from our Black leaders across the world as they are strategizing and figuring out how to navigate this new reality that we're facing. Because Donald Trump is certainly a force of nature. We cannot discount that, and shifting things around and changing a lot of dynamics. But let's use that as an opportunity to rebalance the scales across the world. So that's what I wanted to talk about today. As we are closing, I would like to bring a quote from Ambassador Chihombori-Quao, since she was very prominent in our show today. We started by commenting on her appearance on Al Jazeera. So let me go ahead and bring out her quote here. I believe you should be able to see it on the screen. There it is. All right, so this quote by Ambassador Arikana is actually taken from her book, The Wake Up Call, which fits very well our topic for today. And her quote says, "You have given up your finances, military and natural resources. What power do you have left? How can any leader run a country without control of the building blocks of the country?" Indeed, how? You cannot lead your country without the building blocks of your country, of a country. So here, considering again that in the Global PAC, we're not here just to point the finger, we're here to see how we advance. This quote, I really want to expand it and go beyond just your country. Here she was talking about presidents who are letting foreign multinationals just come and use their country resources and outsource their military training and things of that nature because they're benefiting themselves. So here I want to expand that from just presidents of African countries, again, to Black leaders. Black leaders generally speaking. So I could say that how can a leader of any black community run their communities without the building block of community and without unity? Unity is essential, as I said before, and so we need to unify if we want to really significantly change the dynamic. But ultimately, African leaders, you need to wake up from your slumber, and you need to do it in a unified way. I understand that there's definitely some resistance out there. I mean, there is definitely some people that are resisting, but let's do it louder. Let's do it in a more unified way. Let's do it together so that we may have a significant influence, significant impact, and really fill the gaps with long-lasting changes that will get us closer to our goals. On that note, I will end up here. Thank you once again for supporting the Global Pack Show. And if you've not done so yet, let me ask you to please go ahead and hit the subscribe button, become part of this platform so that together we can reach the objective we've set for 2025 and we can grow together. But without you, we cannot do it. So once again, thank you for subscribing. It only takes a few seconds. And for those of you that are already a member of this community, thank you for continuing to watch. Thank you for sharing, liking, and send your comments as you wish. Thanks a lot. Remember, as I like to finish, always remember, we are a beautiful people. We are strong people, and we're very capable people. But more importantly, we are the Global Pack. So until next time, peace be with you. Asante sana, which means thank you very much in Swahili. And once again, we are the Global Pack. Thank you very much.